Welcome, Ocularis, to the Ordinary Humans, Extraordinary Choices podcast. Thank you for being on.
Pleasure to be here.
So, just to introduce Ocularis briefly from how we met and what I know about him, we met in the New World MMO about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago, actually. The MMO came out September 2021, and Ocularis was on an opposing faction. So, usually, opposing factions don't collaborate or cooperate that much because the whole game is built around three faction wars. But Ocularis and I connected. We discussed truth and integrity and honesty. And what was it you said, Ocularis, what was your first impression of me when we first spoke?
Highly inquisitive. Um, it seemed like you didn't really know what you wanted to do, but you wanted to make some change. You wanted to change something up. You wanted to make some waves, and you wanted to do something different. So, I mean, that was my first impressions of you.
Hmm. Okay. It makes sense, yeah. I mean, my first, because we didn't even talk in voice chat until way later, but my
Right.
first impression was that, oh, this person's been through some interesting things and they want to share their knowledge and wisdom. Because the first thing we did was argue about honesty versus integrity. And you viewed one as making and keeping promises and the other as um, saying what you believe to be true, right? Uh, but yeah, after that, I think I wrote you a long message after some intense war one night, and then you were like, you just called me out of the blue. And my dad was sleeping, so I went outside to the patio, and it was like 3 a.m. for me, and I was like talking to you quietly. Um, 1 second, I need to put my phone on silent. But yeah, since then we talked on voice chat a little bit. I learned more about you. I learned about your family and your goals and what you were doing at that time, what you were going through as well. So this episode, we're just going to cover how you got into starting your business, Florida Custom Woods, and the founding story of that, and also what your future goals are with that. So yeah, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little about yourself from your perspective?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I am Marcus,
Hmm.
also known as Ocularis. I've been Ocularis in pretty much every game I've ever played since 2002-ish.
Hmm.
Um, I have been a video game player, avid video game player for many years. After high school, I joined the military. After the military, I did a bunch of odd jobs, and then I started truck driving. After I got off truck driving, I streamed for a little while, and then after streaming, I did um, woodworking. So, and that's what I currently do. I currently own the business Florida Custom Woods, and its inception has brought me tons of joy. Like, well, at least calm. We'll say calm, not joy. But yeah.
Is calm similar to peace of mind?
Mm, so I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, my mind still wanders frequently, um still delves into things that it probably shouldn't,
Hmm.
very frequently. But the calm I feel while I'm working on creating a project is um it's just a sense of control and a sense of belonging, we'll
Hmm.
say.
Okay.
Yeah.
A sense of belonging through the craft itself, through
Yep.
the act of
Right.
doing it. Okay.
Right. Right.
Interesting. So while you're doing it, do you find your mind wanders even while you're doing it, or is it only in between the gaps where you're not working on things that you find?
I find that I get everything gets static,
Okay.
right? So like normally everything is super vivid. My mind's constantly thinking of tons of different things all the time,
Hmm.
and some of them not great, some good, whatever.
Hmm.
But when I am working on a project or doing something that requires, my creative focus,
Hmm.
everything else is static. So I mean, I still think of things, sure, but like it takes a lot for it to break through, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying. So it gives you a bit of protection from that distraction and thoughts because you have this one thing you can focus on and keep coming back to. And because
Hmm.
it's a skill you've been working on for years now, I imagine you've gotten quite good at focusing on it and being able to solve problems that come up and turn it into a
Yeah.
creative, immersive endeavor.
Hmm.
Okay, so yeah, now I'd like to jump into the founding story that you told me about, how this all started and the three people who were the major reasons that your business even exists today.
For sure.
Mhm.
Well, so after I got done streaming, my wife was super, super supportive, of course, and she allowed me to take my time to figure out what I wanted to do next.
Mhm.
I started looking into a lot of YouTube videos on construction and building and woodworking and stuff like that because it's always something that I've been um, back in my mind, just like gold mining or something. It's one of those pipe dreams that you never think you're gonna do.
Mhm.
But then, the more I looked into it, the more I was like, well, I want to see if it's possible, you know?
Mhm.
So I started doing things like pricing out, building a workshop and stuff like that. So I'd have a space to start doing things in.
Mhm.
But I'm a really weird person. I spend um, an enormous amount of time prepping for things. I always have done that my whole life. I've done, 6 months to a year before I make a decision on a purchase.
Mhm.
I'm always late on the new video cards or upgrades to the PC, the whole nine yards, because I do all kinds of research on it and I try and figure out exactly what I want.
Mhm.
I was doing that with this, and it was probably 6 to 8 months in to doing this that I got the news that my mom died.
Mhm.
She died the beginning of May 2020. Um, and when that happened, everything kind of tilted. Like my emotions were all over the place, and I didn't really have any kind of solidity to my plans anymore. They were just super fluid.
Mhm.
Um, and I spent probably a week and a half grappling with that. Um, and while I was grappling with that, I was trying to get back on track, figuring out, what I needed to do, whatever.
Mhm.
But I was actually in Lowe's and I was pricing out the lumber to build the thing, putting it back on the, him and haw list, right?
Mhm.
And I got a phone call while I was in there, and it was from my buddy William, and we were real close. The last I had heard from him, he was switching his shift to night shift, and I wouldn't hear from him for a little while. So it had been 2 weeks since I heard from him, 2 or 3 weeks since I heard from him.
Mhm.
But which is odd because we played games every single day. Um,
So you were excited
and
for this call,
I was
right?
excited for the call for sure, sure.
Mhm.
So I immediately answered, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" And it wasn't him; it was his dad. And come to find out, he wasn't taking a night shift. His schedule wasn't getting switched up. The reason why I hadn't seen him was because he had to go into the hospital,
Mhm.
and he passed away. And his dad called me to let me know because it was one of the last things that William asked him to do.
Mhm.
Um, and I walked outside and I broke down a little bit. Um, and then it just something in me clicked, and it was like, no, let's do it.
Mhm.
Life's short, right? I mean, William was 31 years old, and at the time I was, 34,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, let's do it. So I walked back in and I bought it all the stuff that I'd been pricing out for forever. Um, I bought it all, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. So the next 6 days, while I waited on that stuff to get delivered,
Mhm.
um, I spent 6 days not sleeping. I wasn't able to function. Everything was so much worse than when my mom died. It hit me way harder
Mhm.
because I was already vulnerable from previous, But then the stuff got delivered, and that day that it got delivered, I spent 14 hours building a foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and flooring. It took me 14 hours to do it. Never done it in my life before. Just did it, right? Everything, had to make sure everything was square and flat and level and all that jazz.
Did you have like a
Um,
YouTube video to reference, or you just did it based on trial and error?
well, I had been watching tons of construction videos.
Because
So
you
like,
prep for a long time before you make any
right,
decision,
right,
right?
right, right.
So you
So
had
I mean,
knowledge.
I probably had, I would say roughly in the neighborhood of 128-ish hours of watching,
Okay.
um,
But
it
zero
happen,
of doing in terms of
but
building
zero
them.
of doing.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And now you were at
and
128 of watching and 14 of doing after this.
right.
Right. Okay.
And but it took me 14 hours, which
Hmm.
was way longer than anticipated to build the foundation. But as soon as I got that flat, level, perfectly square, as good as I could,
Mm.
I went and I laid down in bed, didn't even take a shower, and I slept for a solid 8 hours
Hmm.
for the first time in 7 days.
Mm.
Um, and then when I woke up, I wanted to repeat the process.
Right.
I mean, of
Something went
course I got
right.
sleep.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So I went back out there and I put the walls up.
Hmm.
And then I did the trusses and the door frames.
Hmm.
And that took me about 12 hours. And then I went back to bed and I slept another 8 hours.
Hmm.
Woke up the next day. I wanted to keep repeating the process for as long as possible because I was getting sleep and it felt good.
Hmm.
Um, what I was accomplishing felt fantastic. I do have videos of the whole process. I sent my wife was up in West Virginia visiting family members when I was doing this,
Hmm.
so I was taking videos of progress each day to show her.
Hmm.
And so it took me 7 days to build the workshop, and all 7 days I slept like a baby,
Hmm.
And then when it was over, um, I couldn't sleep again.
Now you had
So
your purpose had just
yeah,
been
it was
accomplished.
gone.
You needed a new
Right.
one.
hmm So I spent 2 days kind of in limbo,
Hmm.
not sleeping again, feeling bad, and then a buddy of mine came over, Josh, to
Hmm.
see how I was doing. And while we were talking, I, told him I built the workshop. I showed him. He was impressed by the workshop.
Hmm.
He was like, "Well, you want to do woodworking? Have you ever thought about epoxy stuff?" And of course I had, but I just didn't. I didn't think that we had a market for it in my area. I thought that it was too expensive to try and make a purpose or build a business out of it.
Hmm.
And so I took the suggestion. I did do some more research into it to try and find out and see what price points and stuff I'd be at or whatever.
Hmm.
But the next day I pretty much put it back on the back burner.
Right.
Um, then funny enough, the day after that, there were people that were going door to door for city commissioner
Hmm.
in my city, and they skipped over my house. Um, and you knowing me,
Hmm.
that's a no-no for me.
Yeah.
Like, don't skip it. You got to give me a reason. Like, what's going on? So I walk out there and ask them, why they skipped over my house. And I had a feeling I knew what it was.
Hmm.
But I wanted to confront him and see. And he was like, "Oh no, we didn't. We just must have missed you." And I was like, "Well, what are you guys, stumping for?" And they handed me a flyer, and the city commissioner that was running the stuff that was on there was kind of amazing, like doing stuff for the kids, community outreach, stuff like that was on the flyer. And I was like, well, this is all good stuff. How does he plan to accomplish these tasks? Like, what is he going to do? Raise taxes? Like, what's his policy positions? And the guy who had stopped when I came out there, he said, "Well, like he didn't know, right? So
Yeah.
he's out there stumping for a politician, and he has no idea." And I was like, "Okay, well, you know." like, how am I supposed to vote for, informed decision? He was like, well, it's on the website. I was like, okay, all right. Well, I went inside and I looked up his website, and his website is literally the flyer.
That's it.
That was just yeah, it was just a flyer,
Yeah.
like the same information, nothing
It's
different.
a brochure
And
website. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's a brochure website.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that kind of infuriated me a little bit.
Hmm.
So I went on the politician's Facebook and I yelled at him. I was like, "Yo, how do you expect an informed voter to vote on a position that where you don't even have any of your information listed? Like, I can't vote for you if you don't give me what you're gonna do. Like
How you're
that's
going to
bull.
accomplish what you
Yeah,
promise. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Like, where's the and the next day, his campaign manager reached out to me and said, "Hey, um, Willie would like to meet you and talk to you about his policy positions and stuff. Would Friday work for you?" And I was like, "Sure, whatever. Friday works. I can have a conversation with a politician that doesn't hurt my feelings any."
Yeah.
Um,
You're home all day.
and yeah, I'm home all day. I'm
Hmm.
not doing nothing. I'm not even sleeping. So
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
Um,
24/7. I'll be here.
yeah, yeah. Ain't nothing wrong.
Hmm.
Um, So Friday rolls around. He's supposed to show up at like 2 or something, and he doesn't show up, right? And I'm like, yeah, go figure. That this is about right.
Hmm.
Friday passes, Saturday comes around, I get a phone call, and it's from him.
Mm.
And he's like, "Hey man, I'm sorry for missing our meeting yesterday. Things are crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, I believe that."
Hmm.
And he was like, "Well, how about we reschedule for Tuesday afternoon?" And
Hmm.
I was like, "Sure, buddy. No problem." Like, you're not showing up anyway. That's cool. And
And this is William.
so
Willie.
yeah, Willie.
Okay. Willie.
His name is Willie Hawkins.
Okay.
Um, and so he reschedules for Tuesday, and I'm sitting there just chilling out, waiting around Tuesday, and he shows up.
Hmm.
Dude comes out while I'm out like sawing up some trees or something. I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, the city had just taken down some trees in my yard,
Hmm.
and I was sawing it up to put it out or whatever. And he shows up while I'm doing that, and I take a break and I have a conversation with him that ends up turning into like a 2.5 hour political conversation with a libertarian versus a Democrat.
Hmm.
And I tried to get an idea. So even though I don't agree with his national policies,
Hmm.
the man's ideas for the city of Eustis were great. They were fantastic. He was looking to annex land to increase the revenue rather than increase taxes
Hmm.
in order to fund these things that he had on the list. Also, he had some ideas about how to beautify the area and how to bring business in and
Hmm.
stuff. And so we had a pretty good conversation about it. And at the end of it, he asked me what I did, and I was like, well, you know, not really anything.
Not much of anything right now.
And then I told him the idea that I had. I showed him the building in the back,
Hmm.
and he was also fairly impressed by the building that I had never done anything before that.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Well, what's this?" And he pointed to what I was working on, which was it was a mold with the cedar boards that I was going to turn into the charcuterie boards.
Cedar's a type of wood, correct?
Yes, cedar
Okay.
is a very pretty redwood.
Hmm.
It's local to Florida. It's also California, places like that.
Hmm.
It's different over there than it is over here. It's got a lot more live, what we call sapwood over here. So it's got a lot more whites and stuff running through it than it does over in California. But anyway,
Hmm.
he saw it and he was like, "Well, you know what? I'll buy your first 4 board." Well, actually, he said 3,
Three
but he ended up
boards.
buying 4.
You ended up buying
Yeah,
four. Okay.
yeah. Um, and I was like, I mean, okay. I mean, like, how can you argue with that, right? So I was like,
Guaranteed
okay,
sales. Yeah.
yeah, guaranteed, right?
Pre-order. Yeah.
So I was like, okay. I ordered the epoxy,
Hmm.
and when it came in, I just started working on it,
Hmm.
and they came out gorgeous, beautiful. And then that's why he ended up buying all 4, was because when he came in to look at it, he was like, yes. And I was like, cool. So we started a relationship at that point. Like, I even went around stumping for him.
Mhm.
I went around to all the Trump signs out there,
Mhm.
because conservatives and libertarians, they like to talk about policy, and no one else that was stumping for him was talking about policy. They were just, tugging at the emotions, the heartstrings, right?
So you became one
So
of his strongest advocates through reason.
I wouldn't say strongest advocates, but I mean,
What I
the
mean
only
is that
reason.
he didn't have any other advocates through reason. You were the only one, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, I don't know if his. Well, it depends on what you call reason, right?
Discussion,
Like,
ideas, facts,
I,
logic,
I, well,
policy.
okay.
Yeah,
If you want to go with facts and logic and policy, sure.
yeah.
But if
That's
if you
reason.
want to go with, I mean, if someone believes in something to the extent where they believe that it's fact, right?
Then it's their reasons.
In their mind, that's their reason, right?
But they need to be open to being wrong about it. Like our emotions can be wrong. I can get angry for wrong reasons, like
Yeah.
I can,
Well,
yeah,
my big thing was I was appalled that they were just skipping over all these Trump supporters.
right.
Like, if it had a Trump sign in it, they were just like,
Is that
pass
why
it
they
up.
skipped over your house?
Yes.
Okay. So basically if they thought that you were conservative, they didn't want your vote. And why is that?
No,
Did
they
they
didn't
view
want to try
they
for
didn't
your
want to
vote.
try for your vote because they
Well,
believed it was
because
easier to get
because
the other votes.
yeah, Willie Hawkins is an African American,
Hmm.
right? And so everyone that was stumping for him was like, well, if they're a Trump supporter, they're racist.
Mm.
That was their
Their view.
yeah.
Oh, so they had
And
already classified Trump as a
yep.
racist. Okay. I
hmm
see.
But
Hmm.
like, I'd go up to the Trump sign houses
Hmm.
while they were out stumping, and me and a couple of the guys, and we'd go up and I'd talk policy. I'd be like, hey, look, this is what he wants to do.
This is
He
how he
wants
wants
to
to improve
annex.
our community.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And then I'd break it down
This is how he's
how he was
funding
gonna do.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would break down the 3 most important things on there to me,
Isn't that awesome
because
though? Yeah.
oh yeah, fantastic.
So this isn't just
It worked out
reason
well.
or argument. You're not trying to change people's political mindsets. You're just trying to say, look, this guy really cares about our community. And you could even
Yeah,
point out, like, hey, I disagree with him politically. I'm on the other side, but I really like what he wants to do. So I'm
for the
supporting him
community.
for the community.
Yeah,
I think he's
right,
going to make our little place of this planet better for all
right.
of us. So
Correct.
that's why you should
And
support him
so
too.
the
Yeah.
amount of Willie Hawkins signs that were right next to Trump signs was increasing.
Because of you.
And yeah.
Nice. And that
And
looks like a big juxtaposition, right? It's like,
yeah,
wait, isn't that
it's
a
hilarious.
contradiction? Yeah.
Well, I mean, they they didn't ask. I mean, some of them asked what his political leanings were,
Mhm.
but I just went into the policies, right?
Policies, yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess so. The policies are what he wants to actually do,
because
as
I mean,
opposed to politics is different. Yeah,
it doesn't matter if he's gonna vote for Biden or
right.
Trump. Like, that doesn't matter. If he wants to do good for our community, then let him do good for our community. You
So
know
you
what I'm
took a
saying?
bipartisan approach in a way in
Right.
your stuff, and by doing this, you also put in front of people that moral conflict because as they're walking on the street and they see a Trump sign next to a Willie Hawkins sign, they start to think, well, maybe I should question whether Trump or Trump supporters are racist, right? Maybe that
I
comes
don't
into
think
question.
anyone, well, maybe a few people. Definitely the kids that were walking around with me stumping,
Mm-hmm.
they definitely got a different idea of what Trump supporters were, because I was a Trump supporter because there's no way I'm voting for Biden,
But
right?
that's what I mean. You crossed party lines and you allowed them to empathize with and understand the people who they before may have just been demonizing, right?
Right.
Or putting into a very narrow idea of what is this, like a racist, right? A Trump supporter
I
must
mean,
be a
it's
racist.
possible.
Yeah.
Definitely the people that I was with,
Hmm.
that they definitely got a different view of things. But, like, I'm not sure if the people that just put the signs out. I I know that the people, anyone who put a sign out, definitely voted for the guy.
Hmm.
So, like,
If they put it
whether
out
they were,
themselves. Yeah.
even if they were Republican all the way down, they still voted for a non partisan Willie Hawkins.
Hmm.
So
Did you end
so
up
it worked
working
out.
with the guy who skipped over your house, the same person you talked with about the flyer?
No.
So were these
Also
like
the
short-term volunteers or why why was there so much turnover in the people who were going around putting up flyers and talking to people?
well, because people have lives,
Right.
right?
So he was only in the
Yeah.
campaign for like a few weeks or a few months, or I'm
I
surprised.
don't know.
Or maybe your schedule just never lined up, is all it was, possibly.
Yeah, I only went out a handful of times
Mm.
going door to door with them. But
But it
anyway,
sounds like your impact was quite outsized compared to the time you spent.
possible.
Okay. Anyway,
But
go ahead.
so I sold the 4 boards to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then I reinvested that money, and I bought some more epoxy, and then did some more, and then they sold. After they were done, they sold 2 days after. Within 2 days, all of them were gone,
How were you
and
marketing these at first? So after Willie Hawkins, who was your second customer?
literally word of mouth.
Literally. So
And
he told somebody.
and then my fourth time of
Mhm.
making them, I posted on Facebook. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, so like it was, I kept making them and they kept selling. And then I made a table and it sold. And then I made noodle boards and it sold. And people just started hitting me up word of mouth, right?
And they started ordering things like, hey, I want you to make this for me. And they paid
Yeah.
you upfront?
Uh, no, they
No.
paid when the project was finished.
Okay. But they committed
And
upfront to the
and then
project.
like I got a real estate lady who wanted to
Hmm.
give them out as housewarming gifts when she
Hmm.
sold a house.
Right.
And so she ordered a bunch, and
Of
then like
cutting boards or charcuterie boards.
yeah,
Okay.
I've always been front my own projects because if it doesn't sell to you, it's gonna sell to someone else.
And I think you mentioned
So
you often find it sells for even more than the original
yep,
price once you do get to sell to someone else. So that's
yep.
interesting. It maybe
Because
shows
my
that,
quotes are always lower than what
yeah,
the item's actually worth
right.
because I undervalue my time for sure.
Not just that, but maybe you undervalue how much people love that kind of handcrafted. Because when you put your life energy into a handcrafted thing, I think people can feel it. Like I was showing my, handmade Japanese bamboo flute on, the last interview, and I realized that all of the craftsmanship, and he had a handwritten note, the guy who tested it, and said that it's probably worth 508 to 800 USD. I don't know how much I spent, but it's similar with you. You could put in a handcrafted note that says like, I tested this myself. It's great. The wood was amazing to work with. And you do send videos of your process to customers, right?
Yep.
Tell us about that.
So, anytime someone starts a project up, if
Hmm.
they're intrigued about the process or if they want some kind of involvement in it,
Hmm.
I from start to finish. I go cut the trees down myself. I slab up the wood myself. I kiln dry the wood myself.
Hmm.
Um, I do from start to finish on every single one of these projects. So if the person that is ordering this wants, I have videos and pictures of every stage of the process throughout. I have the pour, I have the sanding, I have everything that I have some picture or some video on it, and they get that throughout the process. And a lot of people really like that.
Hmm.
Some people don't care, but the people that don't care, I don't send them stuff if they don't want it. But
Hmm.
a lot of people do really like to be part of the process, so and I provide that because I mean it takes an extra few minutes out of my day
Hmm.
to be able to, involve them. So and people like being involved in stuff.
Yeah, I can tell. Like so many people have come out to support the podcast and help me and give me advice and contribute in various ways. So I think people like to be part of a journey towards building something. And
Yep.
do your customers sense that you are truly building something? Like it's not just a faceless corporation or business, it's like a person behind everything. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, so it's a,
And I mean that
yeah.
I found that
Hmm.
when I got sick a few months ago.
Hmm.
I got sick. I got poison sumac all over my body, and it blew me up like a balloon. I almost died from it. It got in my lungs, whole 9 yards.
We'll talk about that story next episode. Yeah, I think viewers would love to hear that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I found that out then that people actually care about the person.
The person
So
behind the scenes, because maybe you
yep.
took that for granted or didn't realize it before that. Because I believe
Oh,
you
for
said
sure.
they gave you forgiveness on deadlines when you started to message people saying, because you keep your promises, right? If you make a
Yep.
deadline, you want to stick to it. You have high integrity in that sense. So once,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, once people forgave the deadlines or they said, hey, it's all fine, we understand you're going through some stuff, don't worry about it. The project will be delayed, that's okay. Then you realize, wow,
Yep.
they really care. They're not just in this for the product, they care about me as a person, and probably you care about your customers as people as well, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Like they become temporary friends.
Hmm. Through
And
the
then some
process.
of them become friends. Just period.
Are you still in
So
touch with Willie Hawkins?
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. We did a class together, one of my classes where you can come and make your own stuff
Hmm.
under supervision, of course.
Right.
He came and did the class for free because I wanted to give him something. So you know, like we still talk every so often. I try not to nag him too much because he's
Busy.
a busy man.
I understand.
But I probably talk to him 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay, not bad. So every quarter. Uh,
Yeah,
Interesting. And how often do you run these workshops, these classes? Like I could attend
once
one
a month.
once a month. Okay.
Mhm.
And do you want to accelerate that pace? Is that something you're interested in getting into more?
I don't really want to accelerate the classes. I'd
Hmm.
like to change the classes into being a mixture of boards and tables. I'd like to
Hmm.
do bigger projects in the classes, you know.
Okay. So you'll scale up in that way. So rather than scaling
Right.
frequency, you'll scale scope.
Right.
And tell us about your plan to improve your community, sort of the way Willie Hawkins also was doing his bit. You have your own idea with your business.
Yeah. Well, what I'd like to do is
Hmm.
I'd like to be in a position to help out my local kids. There's not a whole lot for them to do around here, and there's not a whole lot of positive reinforcement for them either. I mean, other than sports and stuff, they're running the street, not doing nothing. And I'd
Hmm.
like to provide something that would not only give them something to do, but put a little money in their pocket as well.
Hmm.
And what I'd like to do is I'd like to, supply the wood and do the prep work and stuff, and then they could come out and do, to start off it'd just be sanding or something.
Hmm.
And then as they grew in their knowledge base, they could start building things as well. But then I'd like to take their items and I'd like to sell them at the I go to fairs and events and stuff with
Hmm.
with a booth, and I'd like to sell their stuff at that, and then give them the profit, um,
Hmm.
and that'd be like that's my goal, is to be able to make some change, and give someone else purpose.
Hmm.
Like, because purpose is everything to me, you know? Like, it's what is still driving me, and it's what allowed me to, pull out of the nosedive that I was going to be in. Um, and I'd like to be able to give someone else that. I'd like to be able to give someone else. Well, I can't go run drugs because every week I go and I make $200-300. There's no reason for that. Like,
Hmm.
I might as well go do this woodworking thing on my days off. So that's what I'd like to.
You'd like to give people a better alternative
Yep.
than. So is it common for kids to get into gangs and running drugs in your community?
that's that's who's in gangs, and like they're easily manipulated because they don't know any better.
And they
And
want
then
belonging. Just like you
yeah,
found in your woodwork, they want belonging, but they find it in the gangs. You'd like them to find it in your workshops and the community you build around making these boards and these projects, and to perhaps find it in themselves while working on these projects, just like you did, right,
yeah,
over
for
time.
sure.
Because I
Yeah,
guess
I mean,
belonging has to
it's
come from themselves first, right?
right.
Eventually.
They
Yeah.
have to they have to love themselves,
Hmm.
you know.
Which is a hard
And
thing
if
for everyone to learn.
right, but if you have purpose and you love what you do,
Mm.
it becomes easier for you to love yourself,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
It's easier to look inside if you're doing something that's noble or decent.
And that you
Like it,
intrinsically find joy in as well.
yeah.
So you're
It's
not
way easier.
self-sacrificing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's way easier to look within if what you're doing is good.
Mm. So I think you gave me some numbers. So the your background is blurred out, but just for the listeners, Marcus made those three shelves above his wife's desk behind him on the wall at the back, and he was talking about how he could help the kids basically make boards like that. So I think you said you would cut the board to size, they would sand it, and you would prepare the metal brackets, and then it might take you an hour of your time and an hour of their time total, and you would spend $70 on materials and you could sell it for $120 a set of those three shelving units with metal brackets. And so you
Right.
could
Yeah.
then give them $30 for the hour that they spent, and you could keep $20 for your hour, which is undervaluing your time, but you also value the impact that you're having. So that's part of how you're getting paid in an intangible way. And
Right.
then those kids were earning $30 an hour for sanding things and then learning more advanced woodworking. And I'm assuming that if they get faster at sanding and they get more efficient at delivering quality results, you'll still give them the full $30, right? Like they're being paid for the result,
Oh,
not
for
for the
sure.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So
Right.
they actually.
So if we were doing like sets of
Mhm,
3 shelves and we were selling it for 120 or $130 or whatever,
mhm,
and it was set out for them to make 30 or $40
mhm,
for that hour's worth of sanding that they're going to be doing.
mhm.
Just because they finish 2 sets in the same time does not mean that they're not going to get
They'll get
the
double the
money for
money.
both.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
get
they're going to
60
get double
bucks
the money
instead of 30. So
because
yeah,
it's per unit. It's not
exactly.
going to be, they're going to make $10 per shelf.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And Jonathan
And
Stark talks about this. He talks about how hourly billing is nuts. He wrote a whole book on it. And it's just like, I'm really glad you're building it in such a way that they don't get punished for working better, right?
right,
More efficiently. It doesn't make sense to get paid less for your time because you worked faster or better. But
right,
obviously,
and
you'll
it's
show them
not
how
like
not to cut corners or take shortcuts, right? Because that'll lead to poor quality products.
yeah,
Quality matters.
and I mean the shelves are just one idea, right? Like
Yeah.
they could also be cutting boards, like
Hmm.
the same size as the shelf
Hmm.
cutting boards,
And you could
like
teach them
in
epoxy over time as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could get fancier with the spices as things go on, and I could pick out the people that have the aptitude for it,
Hmm.
and then they could go further, and then the people that don't have the aptitude could stay at doing $30 an hour, sanding 3 shelves or 3 cutting boards or whatever,
Hmm.
and then just sell them at the markets every time, and I think it'd work flawlessly.
Hmm.
I mean, it would take very minimal investment on my part,
Hmm. And
other than
risk.
time.
Yeah. So a little bit of risk, but that's fine. Everything in life has risk. Even doing nothing has major risks.
Well, I mean, if I'm risking $500,
Hmm.
like, and the potential upside is changing my community,
It's
like
worth it.
that's a no-brainer.
You'll make that
Yeah.
investment every week for months or
Oh,
years until it pays off.
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. $500, done.
Hmm.
And then all I have to do is my time. You can have as much time as you want.
Hmm.
As
That's why
much
we
time.
had an 8 hour conversation before.
Yeah,
By the way, I
that's
really
right.
do appreciate your support of this entire endeavor. Like you told me, you want it to be a meaningful part of the success of this podcast. Like if it does well in 5 years, you want me to look back
I
and
don't care about your podcast.
you care about me.
I care about you.
Okay,
Right.
right.
So I don't want to see success in your podcast. I want to see success in you. And whatever shape or form that takes, you
Yeah.
know.
You're not picky about
So,
how it manifests. Right now
right,
it's a podcast. It might be something else in the future. You're right. I
right.
shouldn't I shouldn't be picky about how it manifests either, because I might find something I love even more intrinsically, or that has a greater
Possible.
impact, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Or this may change into something different.
Yeah.
Every job I've ever had has had metamorphosis throughout, So
Yeah.
your podcast may become interviews on the street or something, or you never know.
Yeah, I was actually, I mean, I ordered a mobile recorder, the H4n Pro. So that'll arrive in the next week or so. I can actually start doing mobile interviews in cars and things. I have a bunch of recordings on my phone from talking with Uber drivers and my brother in the car. But the problem with those recordings is I'll have to see if I can clean them up, or my editor's also going to try. Tony's going to try. You met Tony, right? You liked him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He liked you
That's
quite a
pretty
bit
cool.
as well. Yeah. Anyway, I love your story. You started Florida Custom Woods. I want to go back a little bit briefly to some of the things you said. So it looks like your mom passed away, and that was a grieving time, and
Really
I,
mixed emotions with my
mixed
mom.
mixed emotions. So
Yeah.
not all
Yeah.
purely grief, but because I know that it was a difficult childhood with her, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, she was an addict,
Mhm.
and it was tough, um, sussing out what was real and what wasn't with her.
Mm.
So it was definitely more conflicted. There was some anger, some pain, some grief.
Mm.
There was a lot of different stuff balled up in that one. But I mean, with William, that was cut and dry. You know.
That was pure loss.
Oh yeah, pure loss, 100%. He
But
was.
somehow you
This
took
world needed more of him, for
right.
sure.
You took loss, and you transformed it into purpose over time.
No,
No?
no.
What
I
happened?
I have not transformed my loss. I haven't even dealt with my loss.
Okay, so you're
The
using
the
purpose to
purpose has
avoid your loss.
subsided. Yeah, correct.
Okay. Purpose is there
Yeah,
to
I'm
cover
I'm
up your loss.
ignoring yeah, I'm
Hmm.
ignoring those feelings. I'm pushing those aside,
Hmm.
and I'm using purpose as a way to do that. Yeah. Um,
Interesting.
it's not the most healthy of things for sure. I really need to deal with everything that with the hand that I've been dealt.
Mm.
But
The emotions and the grief and processing the
yeah,
trauma, basically.
I'm just I'm just afraid that it's gonna break me, and I don't
Mhm.
know how long I'd be broken for, and I can't be broken. Like that's not something I'd be able to handle, you know.
Mhm. Are you hesitant to see like, let's say, a trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapist who's very good at what they do? And it's like you go to an expert, bang, bang, bang. They walk you through it in a way that is safe, controlled, monitored, and try
The
to get you
problem
through the other side.
the problem with therapists, counselors, stuff like that,
Mm.
both my parents were counselors,
So that's
therapists.
hard for you.
It's well, I mean, it's hard for me because, my father
Mhm.
was a child abuse counselor,
Mm.
right? And my mother was a substance abuse counselor. So,
And did your
irony.
father abuse you as a child, and did your mother abuse substances?
Well, I mean, so dad had a lot more good than bad, you know.
But the bad was
Um,
pretty bad.
well, he was an alcoholic
Same
or
as my
is an
dad.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when
So,
when they're drunk, it's a very different person sometimes
right.
than when they're
And
not.
I mean, he doesn't remember a lot of it, and like childhood was spotty,
Mm-hmm.
but like when he was a good dad, he was a great dad, you know?
Mm.
And and now that he's older and stuff, he's a fantastic dad.
Yeah,
And
you
I
told me
mean,
stories. You and Erica love
oh yeah.
him. You're in
Oh
great
yeah.
relationship with him. I'm very happy to hear that that's far better.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I very much enjoy the relationship I have with my dad. Mom was different though.
Mm.
Um, when she was always very manipulative and she didn't know how to love, you know.
Mm.
And I mean, it's because of what happened to her, you know.
Mm.
She went through a massive trauma when she was a child. Her father shot her mother in the face, blew her away.
Wow.
And yeah,
In front of
so
her,
right.
live. That I don't know how I would ever process something like that. But
So
yeah.
she has. I mean,
Mhm.
there's plenty of reason to be who she is or be who she was.
So you
Sorry, she's
don't
gone now.
necessarily like blame her. You kind of understand, but you also wish she
I
could
mean,
have.
I
Yeah.
blame her. I
Mhm.
blame her for never picking her kids before the drugs. You
Right.
know.
She always put the drugs over the kids.
Yeah, and that's what I can blame her for.
Mm.
But like, I don't blame her for my mistakes or my failings at this point because I mean, I there was a time where I did,
Mm.
because it was easy, right?
It was an easy way
But
to shove away the pain rather than take it on.
yeah,
The truth, yeah.
but when you get confronted with something real, all that fades away.
Mm.
And then you're just left with a bunch of excuses. And you can either rail real hard at the excuses and act like that's the reason why, well, nothing's going to get better because of this,
Mm.
and just, give up. Or you can realize that, your choices are made by you, you know.
Right.
Your past doesn't shape who your future is going to be, your present does.
Hmm.
So be better. And that's just what you got to do.
And that's the entire reason I made this podcast, to find undertold stories like yours and to show people that you can go through really, really hard, difficult things in life. Life will treat you like a punching bag sometimes, but you have to be able to bounce back and figure out what's next. And in that process, you can also heal. I do want to ask, what do you think your healing process might look like? Because it'll be tough for you to trust even a trained trauma therapist. It'll be tough for you to, I mean, maybe you are healing bit by bit through time and through
Well, that's
craft.
what I'm hoping,
Mm.
right? What I'm hoping is the saying "time heals all wounds."
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that saying is a saying for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna put as much time in between me and what happened and see
If
if when I
perspective
do cross
shifts.
that bridge, it's gonna be less of a rickety crick of a bridge.
Yeah, I'm
That's what I'm hoping.
conflicted. I'm conflicted on that idea because I can tell that, yes, some of the things that were the biggest problems in the world to me 5 years later look like, insignificant grains of sand in the
Right.
vast void of my perspective that is now instead of what it was 5 years ago. And yet I also know that trauma can really like set in over time rather than become dissolved. It can become entrenched. And that's the challenge with human psychology, right?
Well, what I found thus far in
Mm-hmm.
the last 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? What I found is I have seasonal depression anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. That's why I have this sun lamp.
Um, yeah,
SAD, SAD, seasonal
got
affective disorder. Yeah.
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
it's gotten a lot worse in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's the only thing about waiting
Mm-hmm.
to deal with the issues
Mm.
that I found is a detriment.
They'll come out sometimes at
Instead,
night or in the winter or in the dark or
yeah,
right. When you are
and
alone and you have nothing to do or that's
yep.
when the worst thoughts and that's when you really know yourself in a way or you get to see yourself for who you are. Not when you're busy and engaged and have purpose and fulfilled or
So
helping
every
people.
once in a while at 2
Yeah.
a.m. In November, December, January, February,
Mm.
I'll just walk out to the workshop and start like fiddling with stuff,
Get your
and
mind
then
off things.
4 or 5 o'clock in the morning roll around, and I trudge back in and lay down and see if I can't go back to sleep. So like I mean it's not great, it's not healthy, but
It's healthier than what it was.
exactly. I
It's
think it's
progress.
the right. I mean, I haven't gone into a bottle. I haven't put anything in my veins,
Hmm.
right? So like the the choice to ignore it and use purpose as a way to avoid it
Hmm.
is a better choice, I think, than the alternative, in my opinion.
You're doing the best with the tools that you have,
Right.
which I'm very proud of. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking for a bit about like how many things had to go right and align serendipitously for you to find yourself starting your
Everything.
business finally, right? It was,
Everything.
yeah, everything.
Hmm.
Mom,
Everything.
then Will. Yeah,
I had to go through all the crap that I went through.
yeah.
I had to deal with all the nastiness to be in the position that I was, um, to meet Erica, to have that support, to be allowed the opportunity,
Hmm.
and then when the opportunity presented itself, I still tried to, hem and haul my way out of it,
Mm.
and then I got smacked in the face with purpose, man. So like,
Maybe
you
this is
can't
what
stay,
had to happen for you to
yeah.
stop hemming and hawing and to start getting your life together and doing the things you've always wanted to do instead of waiting.
Well, I don't wait anymore.
You don't wait anymore. You don't live with
Mm-mm.
regrets.
Nope.
You
I
just
don't
do
do
what you
that.
feel like doing. You do what you think is
I just
best. You do what is
I
right.
just do.
You
Yep.
just do. I'm
Hmm.
getting better at that. I'm a hemmer and hawer just like you. I sent an email about this podcast over 2 years ago to someone, Derek Sivers. I asked him like, "Hey, what do you have any advice for starting a podcast?" And he said, "Don't half-ass it." That's all he could tell me because he's not a professional podcaster. He just reads out his blog posts and puts an MP3 file on his website so that people have an audio version. And I sent him an email last night thanking him because he was right. I probably wasn't ready in 2021, but I'm ready in 2023 because now I'm not half-assing it at all. I don't have that fear, the
Well, to
anxiety that
be fair, you're ready whenever you decide you're ready.
sure, I could have started in 2021, but I think the 2021 version of me was afraid of so many things. He was so anxious. He was failing in advance all the time. Whereas today it feels like I'm so much more free creatively. I've saved up the money to do this for 10 months without needing to get paid. Like all of these things together just give me a sense of like I can full send it. I can
Right.
work like I've literally been working from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. and then sleeping from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then doing it again. And I don't know how sustainable it is. I have to probably
You
set
need a little bit more sleep, yeah.
yeah, I probably need to set alarms for eating
You
and
should
drinking
probably
and,
go to the gym a little bit
and
more.
exercising.
You should probably do a little bit more eating,
Yes.
drinking. Yeah, for
But
sure.
we'll
Yeah.
get there. What it just
You should
feels good.
also cut out a little bit of time for some kind of entertainment or some getaway. But
Yeah,
yeah.
or like family time or something fulfilling
And
relationship.
the sooner you do those things is probably better for you
Right.
mentally and physically.
Yeah. And it'll
Yeah.
sustain the business better.
Yep. Because your production will be higher
It will.
and
My
better
creativity will be
quality.
better.
Mhm.
Rest. Yeah.
Well, it's not just about your creativity. It's
Mm.
also about your production quality. and your viewers are going to be able to see that.
Mhm.
So if you get run down, like, there's only so much your body can take, you know?
And my mind as well, of course. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I appreciate it, Ak. Do you think Willie Hawkins would be interested in seeing this episode? You can probably send it to him. I think he'd like to
Um,
hear how he contributed to the origin of your business. He probably knows, but
I mean, he already knows.
yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely had the conversation with him many times.
Okay, perfect.
Like,
Then there's
yeah,
no,
he knows
yeah,
for sure.
then there's no
But
need. Hmm.
I mean, if you blow up real big and he sees it or something, like, it'll be cool to have a little footnote in history. Sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up here. We've been going for about 51 minutes.
Sounds
Are there any final thoughts or general advice you'd like to give to people who say are where you were 3 years ago? Maybe they're struggling. They feel like life has it out to get them. They feel like nothing they do sticks, and they feel like it's really hard to make progress. They're just, treading water or wading through quicksand. What kind of advice could you give to someone who's in that situation?
Um, I would say the biggest thing is, if you can work on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then everything else is going to fall into place. If you have self-confidence and you love yourself, and that shows, you know. So no matter what you do from then forward, it will be better. Um, the more that you believe in yourself, in your capabilities, and trust yourself, if you're honest with yourself, these are all things that you can do in no matter what situation you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll improve the quality of your life everywhere else. Um, if you have a project to do and you don't believe in yourself or trust in yourself or have that self-confidence or whatever, it's going to turn out worse than if you do. So that's probably my thing that I could give to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
in no matter what situation they're in, no matter if it's relationship, no matter if it's job or performance or well-being,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. Have faith in yourself, believe in yourself, trust yourself, be honest with yourself. You know, because without your own relationship with yourself, then there's nothing else. You
Mm-hmm.
can't have one with someone else. It'll fail.
I'm just digesting that. That was very insightful. So you can start with yourself.
You have to start
Yeah,
with yourself.
you have to. Where else can you start?
You can't.
Everything
You
must
can't.
start with yourself. Yeah. You can't
You
start
know,
outside yourself without changing yourself first,
the the Serenity Prayer is used in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous for a reason. You
Mm.
know, it's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Mm-hmm.
the courage to change the things I can, and the
Mm-hmm.
wisdom to know the difference. So it's very powerful to know that the only thing that you can change is yourself, and you can't affect things outside of yourself without improving yourself.
Right.
Yep. Hmm.
And the paradox there is that for the people who feel helpless to change the world, when you start with yourself, you may find that the impact ripples outward far
Yep.
more quickly and far more distantly than you expect.
Yep.
And you
And it'll
realize that,
prevent you from getting burnt out too. Because
yeah.
if you take on too much,
Hmm.
um, you'll end up breaking yourself down instead of building yourself up.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And building yourself up is what you have to be doing your entire life as much as possible because
Yep.
you are the
It's the
only
only way that you
investment,
can help others.
yeah, in yourself. Yeah. Because you can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. It just doesn't
Nope.
make sense. You got to find mutually beneficial win-win ways to work with others, collaborate.
Right. Yep.
And so that's what society wants. Nobody really wants us to sacrifice in the long run. It's not good for them or society. All right, thank you, Marcus. It was great having you on. Have a great
Good
rest
to
of
be
your
here.
day. Yeah, and
You as well.
just to wrap up, I want people to I'll put in the description Florida Custom Woods. Please visit his website. He's got amazing products at great rates. His prices will probably go up as demand increases. So get it while it's hot off the off the press. And yeah, thank you, Marcus. See you.
You, thank you very much. Have a
Take
good
care.
one.